Now I want to introduce you our next speaker, Moustapha Ndiaye. Moustapha is an engineer in electricity and telecommunications born in 1957. After a quest during which he was very interested in different forms of religious studies through reading and associating with personalities sharing the same concerns, he joined the Group for Research and Studies in Spirituality. This group was created by his father, Moussa Ndiaye, in 1972, based on questions and answers. It eventually results in a systematic teaching and spiritual education based on the teachings of the Urantia book, of which Moussa had received a copy from Jack Weiss in the late 60s. Since 1982, with the researchers of the association created by Moussa, Moustapha has supervised the spiritual training of several seekers of truth in Senegal, among the 1,000 people who have more or less had this training. More recently, he has invested himself with his brothers in spirit from Senegal, Canada, and Belgium in sharing this training in progressive divine wisdom. This sharing is done with educators and former Urantia book readers for the benefit of truth seekers and Urantia book readers in different countries. Thank you very much, Moustapha, for your willingness to serve. The session is yours. Go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenny, for this introduction. I will just make another introduction because my English is not very fluent as I would like it to be. So I will have an interpreter, but for this introduction, I will try to speak directly in English. The purpose of this session is to give a brief introduction about the human Jesus. It is very easy for the human mind to marvel at the divine Jesus, but it is more useful and profitable for the same human mind to discover the human nature of Jesus. It is also more profitable for this human mind and also for the human soul to realize that they can be inspired wonderfully by the life of the Son of Man, as it was incarnated by the Creator Son, Jesus. It is the best way to bring us to meet with the inner Christ within each of us. The constant recourses to the concept of the Son of Man by Jesus is also, for myself, a precise indication that he has built his ministry on human foundations. It is for this reason that we have chosen the highlight in this presentation to put the accomplishment of the Master in this regard. This is to allow us to understand that he could have said that anyone who so desired can become not only the son of the kingdom through faith, but also the ambassador of the kingdom through the service. We have for this purpose the help of the Spirit of Truth, which he did not benefit himself, Jesus, during his ministry. In addition, we have also the presence of the divine fragment from the same universal Father who contributed to the outpouring of the Spirit of Truth. I will ask just before starting this presentation a minute of silent meditation of thanks to the Father and the Son, but also to the divine minister for having raised us to the dignity of the Son of God through faith and with the support of the Spirit of Truth of Jesus Michael. Il s'agit donc dans cette présentation de faire une brève revue des éléments saillants de la vie de Jésus selon notre perception. Cela concerne sa vie familiale, son ministère social, son ministère planétaire caractérisé par son séjour à Rome, et le ministère apostolique suivi de l'effusion de
The social ministry, his planetary ministry characterized by his stay in Rome, his apostolic ministry followed by the outpouring of the Spirit of truth and his Urantia appearances.
Je disais qu'il s'agit dans cette présentation de faire une brève analyse des éléments
We're
majeurs.
going to briefly outline the major points of Jesus' life according to our perception during the different phases of his life. We're going to look at his family life, his social ministry, his planetary ministry characterized by his stay in Rome, and we're also going to look at his apostolic ministry followed by the outpouring of the Spirit of truth and his Urantia appearances.
Donc, à chaque étape, nous tenterons de mettre en
So
exergue
at each level, we are going to analyze key issues to
aussi
come
bien
up with the truth.
la prophétie que
Through the truth that he brought out and also through his own life, we're going to mention the various pillars which can be useful to all seekers of truth. So we are going to start with the family life, childhood, and adolescence of Jesus. This part of his life has to do with his birth, his early childhood and infancy right up to the last part of his childhood, including his first trip to Jerusalem. Upon returning from Alexandria, where the family had settled to flee from the persecutions of Herod, Mary, Joseph, and Jesus settled in Nazareth, where Jesus grew up normally until the age of his first moral decision on February 11 AD, which marks the coming of his thought adjuster, at the same who endured much event during his sojourn in the flesh. Jesus was no more conscious of the coming of the divine monitor than are the millions upon millions of other children who, before and since that day, have likewise received thought adjusters to endure their minds, to work for the ultimate spiritualization of that mind, and to prepare for the eternal survival of their evolving immortal souls. On this day in February, the direct and personal supervision of the university's leaders with regard to the integrity of Michael incarnate as a child came to an end. From that time on and throughout the human development of his incarnation, the safeguarding of Jesus was to be the responsibility of this indwelling adjuster and the associated guardian angels, assisted from time to time by the ministry of the midways, designed for the execution of certain definite tasks assigned to them in the judgment of the teachers of their planetary superiors, and the safeguarding of Jesus was to be the responsibility of this indwelling adjuster and the associated guardian angels, assisted from time to time by the ministry of the midwayers, designated for the execution of certain definite tasks assigned to them in the judgment of the teachers of their planetary superiors. So most of his basic education took place in the family between the attention of his mother and the initiations to the trades of his time: farm work, animal husbandry, horticulture, etc. The questions put to his father about natural phenomena and their explanations, the personal observation made around him. The natural tendency to ask questions that reflect a progressive awareness of one's life mission, to associate with other people for exchanges on complex subjects, the discovery of various professions and human means of earning a living, awareness of the history of the Jewish people through his father's guided tours up to his 13th year when he first visited Jerusalem. All these laid the groundwork for his social ministry.
Les phénomènes de ressemblance physique se combinent dans la
So
famille.
to close the chapter on the family, let's mention that Jesus explained that the true family is based on the following 7 facts. The fact of existence, that is 1. The relationship of nature and the phenomena of mortal likeness are bound up in the family. Children inherit certain parental traits. The children take origin in the parents. Personality existence depends on the acts of the parents. The second one is security and pleasure. The third is education and training. The fourth is discipline and restraint. The fifth is companionship and loyalty. The affectionate father holds intimate and a loving relationship with his children. Always is his ear open to their petitions. He's ever ready to share their hardships. Number 6 is love and mercy. Because the compassionate father is freely loving, fathers do not hold vengeful memories against their children. Number 7 is provision for the future. All of this reconciles us with the fact that human fatherhood is the first of the 7 paternities that should lead us to recognize that fatherhood of the universal father on paradise. It also gives another framework for reading the presentation of Jesus' family live in the first part of his talk. So this was about Jesus' early childhood. We are now going to talk about his social ministry. During the second part of his life, it had to do with part of his stay in Jerusalem, the decisive years marked by the death of his father Joseph, as well as the years as a teenager and his life as a young man, including the whole period before his departure for Rome. This part, considered as social ministry, took place within the framework of the Jewish society to which he belonged. It actually began in the form of questions asked in the temple during his first visit to Jerusalem with his parents. These questions are: what really is there in the Holy of Holies behind the veil? Question 1. Number 2, why must mothers in Israel be separated from the male temple devotees? Number 3, if God is a father who loves his children, why all this killing of animals to gain divine favor? Was Moses' teaching misunderstood? Number 4, since the temple is devoted to worship of the Heavenly Father, does it make sense to tolerate it in the presence of those engaged in the profane trade of barter or trade? 5, will the expected Messiah be a temporal prince sitting on the throne of David, or will he act as a light of life in the establishment of a spiritual kingdom? We should note the following, that these themes will come back strongly in his apostolate and will constitute determining axes of his later ministry. In reality, the innocent and spontaneous way of asking these questions was in itself a teaching, spontaneously suggesting part of the answer or entertaining thoughts that would prepare to receive the true answer. Another major observation is the very wise choice of text which he was led to read during his first sermon in the synagogue and in the subsequent sermons read as he approached the financial struggle. During the same period, he had to face 4 great challenges related to the following. 1, the financial situation after the death of his father. Number 2, the education of his brothers and sisters as brother-father. 4, the situation created by Rebecca's advances. And number 4, the effort of the zealots to enlist him in the nationalist movement as a leader, an undertaking complicated by the involvement of his mother, who succeeded in influencing his brothers. In spite of everything, he continued his role as the religious educator of his brothers by bringing them all to make the pilgrimage to Jerusalem as Joseph had done for himself a few years before. It is also worth noting the episode in Damascus where he was offered a project by businessmen and bankers from Damascus to establish a center for world spiritual education. After this episode, he received a similar proposal from the Jews of Alexandria. He did not consider that he was able to fulfill his responsibilities for family organization until after the double marriage of Jacques and Miriam, from which date he had established a more permanent home in Capernaum. Even under these circumstances, he found a way to return later to attain the marriage of Martha and later again for the marriage of Simon and Jude. So we can now draw some conclusions on the family and social ministry of Jesus.
Notons simplement qu'entre les deux visitations célestes, l'une à sa 13e
Between the two heavenly visitations, one in his 13th year and the other at his baptism, nothing supernatural or superhuman happened in the life of this incarnated Creator Son. Despite this, the child of Bethlehem, the lad, the young man, and the man of Nazareth was in reality the incarnated creator of the universe, but not once in his human life before the day that John baptized him did he make any use of this power or follow the leadings of celestial personalities except as directed by his seraphic guardian. This episode in Jesus' life highlights the following points, which are the teachings we can learn from his life as a spiritual teacher or as a model of spiritual inspiration for all seekers of divine truth. We are going to talk about them as elements that can help any truth seeker according to the model of the life lived by Jesus. We're talking about a number of factors highlighted by the life of Jesus and likely to inspire every man or woman in his or her personal quest as a truth seeker or spiritual educator. These factors are the following. The capital importance that the family framework can have for the individual as a framework for experiencing relationships with the spirit facilitated, no doubt by blood relationships, but going far beyond it. Number two, the importance that this preparation can have in the social framework of belonging to the family as an opportunity for moral and religious growth. There is also the importance of maintaining and personally developing sensitivity and fidelity to the inner spirit. Jesus gave us the example through his entire life. There is also the importance of respect for established human traditions, both in the family and in society, including in the religious field. Jesus had a lot of respect for the Jewish family, but also for the religion that he had met. The importance of respecting human religious framework. Jesus had a lot of respect and trust in all human beings that he met in his life. And so trust in human nature is also important. It is this moral, family, and social basis that helped Jesus to live his human life fully and completely in a totally divinely satisfying manner and to meet challenges that no man will ever be forced to face. And he succeeded in overcoming all these difficulties and transcending all obstacles as a man and son of man. These are important. Let us recall that there was nothing supernatural during his entire existence. So this is about the family and social ministry of Jesus. Let's now talk about the planetary ministry of Jesus. This period includes the ministry of Jesus in Rome with Ganid and Gonod, as well as all the ministry provided both on the way to and from Rome. It also includes the transitional years of the ministry during the trip to the Caspian Sea and the Urmia conferences. It is in fact Jesus' planetary ministry. The real purpose of his journey around the Mediterranean basin was to know men. This was possible inasmuch as in Rome, the capital of the greatest empire of that time, it was possible for Jesus to encounter most of the social and religious sensitivities of Urantia at that time. This was because of Rome's role as a commercial and cultural crossroads of Europe, Asia, and Africa. So by completing with the surgeons in Alexandria, Damascus, and Urmia, Jesus will have achieved the maximum of what is technically and humanly possible within the means of the times. At the time of undertaking the journey to Rome, he had not yet conquered the complete mastery of his human mind. the adjuster had not fully mastered and formed the counterpart of Malta identity. Jesus was still a man among men. It should also be noted that regardless of the personal plans he had for humanity and his entire local universe, while living in his incarnation on Urantia, he was living it for the entire universe. We are going to also talk about other aspects of his ministry in Rome and on the outward and return journey, among others. In Joppa, his discourse on good and evil and individual responsibility, the discourse on Jonah, made Gaddia a believer in Jesus and one of the pillars of the church after his meeting with Peter. In Caesarea, the Taoist merchants from Mongolia began to teach the truth received from Jesus with great influence, but without the relay hoped for by Jesus from the meeting with the branch of the Eastern Church later led by Abner. At Caesarea, he also met Anaxandros the Greek, and in response to his recriminations against his Roman foreman, gave him an answer and had an interview with both of them, who made them preachers in the ministries of Philip and then Peter. On the island of Crete, he talked with Fortunate, a young man of those days who drowned his fear in the flight of men, and who was transformed by a single interview with Jesus into the chief of the Christians of Crete and companion of Titus to lift up the souls of the Christian believers. A new contribution was also the compilation of the concept of living and dynamic truth of the world religions that were Cynicism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, Jainism, Shintoism, Taoism, Confucianism, and our religion. In Rome, the speeches to Mardus, the acknowledged leader of the Cynics on good and evil, will allow a better reception of the Christian faith. There was also one on truth and faith with Nabon, a Greek Jew who held the leading position among the leaders of the main ministry cult in Rome, and who helped the later preachers of the gospel of Jesus. Jesus also reached out to more than 500 people during this sojourn in Rome, of people from various races and cultures, which he could not have acquired anywhere else. He also influenced the perspective of a Roman senator who vainly sought to substitute the idea of a people sustaining government for that of a government sustaining people. Jesus also turned the speaker of the forum, Marcus, who later became Peter's successor in Rome in defiance of the Roman persecutors at the crucifixion of Simon Peter, into a counselor to the rich man. In Corinth, Crispus, the principal head of the synagogue, with whom he had several discussions concerning the best ways of religious life, received Paul later in the same synagogue and became one of the main supporters of the Christian church which Paul organized in Corinth. Alongside all these observations, it would be interesting to re-examine Jesus' presentations on this journey through the discourses on science, on the soul, on the mind, on truth and faith, on true values, on good and evil, and to set them against the same themes addressed by the revelators. These will allow us to have a more intimate appreciation of the action of the Spirit of Truth, who is his personal spirit conjointly with that of the Paradise Father in enlightening the human mind and illuminating of the human soul. So that ended the chapter in the life of the Son of Man, which might be called the mission of Jesus the Educator. This particular period was followed by years of transition back from Rome, where Jesus had 24 conferences and 12 evening sessions in the Caspian Sea, after a trip to the Caspian Sea. These directed sessions concerned the brotherhood of men, divine and human sovereignty, political sovereignty, law, liberty, and sovereignty. To conclude this part, this has been conducted as a son of man and should constitute a powerful motive of encouragement to every man seeking truth and seeking to share it. Just as we did for the former chapter, we are going to draw some lessons from Jesus' attitude and his teachings, so we can appreciate how much human encounter Jesus had for deep and fruitful spiritual sharing with unpredictable and incalculable consequences, as the life of Jesus abundantly illustrates. Hence, the need for us not to neglect anything and always watch what we bring to others. We also need to appreciate how much simpler and more effective it is to always start from the truth in the minds and experiences of others to bring them to God, and not to come up with presumed concepts of more or less absolute truth, as the following observations in relation to the life of Jesus attest. For example, Jesus began Jewish text when he was invited to the synagogue from the truth stated by the Greek religious current in Rome.
C'est ainsi qu'il partait également des textes juifs quand il était invité dans les synagogues. Il partait des vérités qui étaient énoncées par les courants religieux.
He focused on the truths which were already contained in the Jewish text when he met the cynics, the Stoics, the supporters of the cult of ministries, and he expanded those in a universal manner. The effort of Jesus to elaborate with Ganid a manuscript of living concept of 12 religions, concluding with the presentation of our religion according to each of them, is an illustration of this. And also the Urantia book itself, which was birthed around nearly 1,200 concepts existing in 12 different religions of the planet, is another illustration. So these are very important observations. So the lessons that we can draw from Jesus' life is to appreciate the significance of knowing how to wait for God's hour when one is engaged in the ministry of the Spirit. We need to know how to let God organize us rather than trying to organize Him. For instance, when he had the opportunity to of the trip around Rome, instead of proposals for Damascus or Alexandria, which were very attractive in other respects, but which were the advice of men. We also need to meditate and gain a personal appreciation of how Jesus approached the same concept dealt with by the revelators in other parts of the Urantia book. Another important aspect was his sojourn at Urantia in anticipation of Abner's probable ministry in East Asia to propagate the teachings on the kingdom of God after the failure of the dissemination of the Melchizedek teachings in the Orient. The lesson to be drawn from the topicality of the teachings given at Urantia concerning the problems of modern times. We also need to highlight that there were real opportunities afforded by the modern tools of technology for reaping the spiritual benefits of sharing in service, where the Master has sown and beyond, using his bestowed spirit of truth.
Du Fils créateur. La dernière partie,
the last part has to do.
Je vais rappeler le contexte du ministère en relation avec le plan de la 7e effusion. Ce ministère débute par la rencontre avec Jean le Baptiste.
So this particular ministry began with the baptism, and then there was the training of all the apostles, the 12. There was also the group of Abner, the group of women, and the group of evangelists. He also included all those that he had met. So, this last part, which is about the apostate, it was the technical mission of the fifth division after the baptism of Jesus, as can be attested by what I just read. Wow, Jesus. So, conclusions of the apostolic ministry of Jesus. The mission of the fourth bestowal, that of the creator son of Urantia, technically terminates at the time of the proclamation of his personalized adjuster. The additional mission of apostolate suggested by Emmanuel offers the following advantages. To put a technical end, as of this bestowal, to the end of the Lucifer rebellion in Satania and to the arrest of Satan. The arrest of Caligastia being deferred only because of the absence of a planetary prince on Urantia.
Tu reçois une autorité entière et illimitée pour prendre des mesures envers tout soulèvement éventuel de cet ordre dans l'avenir. Techniquement, ton œuvre sur Urantia et dans la chair d'une créature mortelle est achevée. Ta ligne de conduite dépend désormais de ton propre choix.
So whatever you do now is based on your own choices. So Jesus could have left this planet just after this. He wouldn't have additional ministry. What he did thereafter was done by he himself for the reasons that I'm going to outline. The apostate ministry is an additional ministry which was suggested by Emmanuel. From aside your mission, I would advise you also to carry out the additional task of, and to do all this as a son of man, because, sorry, challenge with the network.
Grâce à tout ce que tu as maintes et maintes fois refusé d'accomplir arbitrairement par force et puissance quand tu disposais de ces pouvoirs, autant où éclatait cette rébellion coupable et injustifiée. Et je considérerai comme l'apogée appropriée de ton effusion en tant que mortel, le fait que tu reviennes parmi nous comme fils de l'homme, prince planétaire d'Urantia, en même temps que fils de Dieu, souverain suprême de ton univers. En tant qu'homme mortel, type inférieur le plus humble de créatures intelligentes dans les badons, affronte et juge les prétentions blasphématoires de Caligastia et de Lucifer. Et dans l'humble état que tu auras assumé, mets fin pour toujours aux honteuses présentations erronées de ces enfants de lumière déchus. Tu as refusé avec persistance de discréditer ces rebelles par l'exercice de tes prérogatives de créateur. Il convient maintenant que dans la similitude des êtres les plus humbles de ta création, donc en tant qu'homme, tu arraches la domination des mains de ces fils déchus. Ainsi, ton univers
Having thus, through your bestowal, established the possibility of the sovereignty of the Supreme in Lebanon, you will have, in fact, completed the unfinished business of all previous insurrections, regardless of how much more or less time may be required for their effective conclusion.
Ayant ainsi par son effusion établi la possibilité de la souveraineté du suprême dans les badons, tu auras en fait mené à leur terme les affaires restées en suspens de toutes les insurrections antérieures, quel que soit le temps encore plus ou moins long nécessaire à leur conclusion effective. Par cet acte, les dissensions en cours dans ton univers seront réglées quant au fond. Et par la suite, quand tu seras doué, doté de ta souveraineté suprême sur ton univers, de semblables défis à ton autorité ne pourront plus jamais se reproduire dans aucune partie de la grande création personnelle.
I am now going to talk about the ministry. I'm still going to talk about the ministry with the apostles.
Le ministère donc commence par la rencontre avec Jean le Baptiste.
It begins with the meeting with John the Baptist and baptism, the training of all the apostles.
Maintenant,
I'm going to also
je ne sais pas si Adi avance dans sa... Voilà. Donc, voilà d'une certaine manière ce que je voulais rappeler dans cette présentation.
So this is what I wanted to, these are the things I wanted to highlight in my presentation.
Je ne trouve pas mes papiers, mais ce n'est pas grave. Je ne sais pas si Adi a avancé dans la traduction. Donc, je vais essayer de mémoire de résumer un peu la dernière partie.
I'm going to summarize the last part about the lessons that we can learn from Jesus' life. He did all this humanely. He didn't try to use his powers for all this. He confronted Kaligasha on his own without any intervention to ensure that all he obtained as a son of man could be shared to all other men, and this is very important to note.
Excusez-moi, j'avais un problème de batterie.
Sorry, I had to charge my laptop. So as I was saying, what is important is that the challenges that he faced, he overcame them as a son of man, because this helped his spirit of truth to support him, just as it supported him as a son of man. And at each point in time, he tried to submit himself entirely to the will of the Father with his spirit of truth. And this is very important because it helps us also to have the spirit of truth in a more careful way, following the model of the life of a man, as Jesus did. It is very important for us. And another important factor is also the fact that Jesus made us sons of God through faith. So he also made us ambassadors of the kingdom, and that's so important. And each human being can become such an ambassador because of Jesus's personal life. So we all have this capacity. We all have a thought adjuster. We all have the spirit of truth, which has worked in the life of Jesus, which he did to exemplify a life lived as a son of man. I think that this is so important for us to be able to analyze this part of his life. We also need to know that through his ministry, he did not personally benefit from the spirit of truth, which came after his death. So he fought alone. So in a sense, we can see that we are we have more tools than him. But when we think about the Creator's Son, we do not think of the Son of Man. We think rather of God. We do not think of the fact that we have a divine fragment within us, of a divine fragment which has had to deal with the personalities of the Michael Son, which brought us a spirit of truth for all men. And he in the beginning, Jesus used to call them children, but later he called them friends. So it is also important for us to take into account the human life of Jesus. And as I said in the beginning of my presentation, Jesus himself used to call himself Son of Man all the time. And I really want us to remember this point. And to conclude, we've been told that since then, we've received the Spirit of truth and adjust us of what Jesus also had. This is very important. So he's not asking us to do what is impossible. Maybe if we had continued, we would have had adjusters which do not have any experience. But we know that we all have this adjuster within us as human beings. So we need to take all that into account. We need to also assess Jesus' human life, which the church has undermined. So what is important, as I said, is for us to take Jesus' life as a source of inspiration, because this is what the apostles did. This is what they used to carry out all that they did. Although they might not have understood Jesus' part, they were sincere in whatever they did. So with this inspiration, so in addition to the life that he lived, we can also learn a lot from the teachings that he taught us. So this is what I wanted to share with you. And the conclusion I wanted to draw from the presentation, I know that we can learn a lot from Jesus' life as a human being. Jesus helped us a lot with his words that he taught us, but we should also consider Jesus as a father and also as a brother. This is what I had to share with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Moustapha. There is any question or comments?
Thank you, Moustapha.
Thank you, Guy.
Collins.
Hi, Moustapha and Adi. That was a great presentation. This is your brother from Ghana. Again, today I've benefited from another presentation that is sort of reminding us what Jesus, or the birth or the mission and the bestowal of Jesus really means to us, and reminding us of essentially what he charges us, to do, and I like the part of your presentation. I don't know whether that is exactly what you wanted to put across, but that's what I felt, that especially at the stage where you sort of narrated how Jesus, upon his first visit to the temple, sort of asked quite some interesting questions. Why there's a lot of animals? Why are women, separated? It was a shock to him. And just like you mentioned, in Christendom, it's almost sacrilegious to ever think of Jesus having a human life or an experience. But what some of these teachings and presentation is presenting to us is rather that it would sort of encourage people, embolden humans, to actually walk that same journey as he did, challenge your thoughts and your thinking, and usher yourself into a whole new realm of spiritual discovery. So thank you once again, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I would like thank you, Moustapha, for that presentation, and thank you for reminding us that we have no excuses. We can do it now, and there's no time to waste, especially when we see what's happening on this planet. So we have a voice. We have a voice, and we are supported by our thought adjusters and the Spirit of Truth. So let's go to it. Let's go out and let's not be ashamed of doing what we have to do, following the guidance of God within. So thank you for reminding us that, because we could always say, yeah, but it was Jesus, and yeah, but it's Jesus, of course. But no, you've just said that we have exactly the same thought adjusters as Jesus in quality. So So we must not go step back and say, yeah, but it was Jesus. No, no. We are fully equipped and we just have to do the job. And so thank you for reminding us that. And I think that if all the Urantia readers could just ponder on that and say, yes, we do have that. So let's go to it. I think that exactly where we are, we can change many things, not because we want to change the things outside, but because we are changing inside. And so of course we have another impact on the environment, the close environment. So let's do it, and let's do it on a personal level, and let's do it together in a group. Wouldn't that be something great to be able to do that and to offer that kind of platform on which that the Supreme can just take support and do its job, do the job? Well, thank you very much.
Yes, I just was interested, at the end of Moustapha talked about how Jesus called himself the Son of Man. And I was interested in his thoughts on what Jesus meant by calling himself the Son of Man.
Jesus is a Son of Man. Jesus is also a Son of God. We also are Son of Man, but we also are Son of God. Jesus is the way. He shows us how we must, what kind of behavior we must have to become really a son of God. It is why he is the way. Jesus is here. He is the Spirit of truth. The Spirit of truth is Jesus for us. The Spirit of truth is the equivalent of Jesus for us. Like Jesus lived among his apostles. It is the same thing. And the Spirit of trust is more efficient because it is the Spirit of the Father and the Spirit of Michael. It combines the two, and we have the two. It is very important. But many people consider Jesus as God. It is true, he is God. But what is important for us is to discover the Christ within us, in our inner life. It is the hope of Jesus. It is also the hope of our thought register. It is the hope of God. And as Agnes said, it is time for us to discover this. Many things can be changed now. It is possible. And it is important also. Thank you.
Thank you, Moustapha.
Thank you, Jen.
We have 3 minutes until our next presentation, so we are free to take a coffee, take a rest, and we will begin soon. Thank you.